I rise today to offer an amendment with Senators Coburn and Sherrod Brown to make a small but necessary step toward addressing the growing problem of federal deficits. This is the second time in as many weeks that we're offering this amendment, and I hope that we will be able to have a vote or get it accepted on the FAA reauthorization bill. The underlying bill we're considering reauthorizes many vitally important programs, including investments in our aviation infrastructure, such as long overdue modernization of air traffic control. And while I support many of these investments, I think it is also critically important that we take a close look at where our spending can be cut as we try to address the looming deficit. Now, of course, my amendment won't come close to solving this whole looming problem, but it will make a dent as we try to get our financial house in order and make the tough choices to avoid burdening future generations with debt. There is no single or easy solution to the massive deficits we face. But one thing we should be doing is taking a hard look at the federal budget for wasteful or unnecessary spending. Hardworking American families have to make these kinds of decisions every week to make ends meet, whether it's skipping dinners out or making do with old clothes instead of buying new ones or finding new ways to trim their grocery bill. People are looking at everything in their household budget to try to cut back in tough times, and the Congress should be doing the same thing, looking to save money, the taxpayers' money, everywhere we can. So what I'm trying to do here is a proposal to get rid of old, unwanted transportation earmarks that would save about $600 million right away and perhaps a few billion dollars over time. It won't eliminate the federal deficit on its own, but it's real money in places like Racine or Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, where I recently held town hall meetings. It's one step on a path that's going to have to involve many additional cuts. I put together a number of proposals for where we should begin tightening our belt, including the one for this amendment, in a piece of legislation I introduced last fall called the Control Spending Now Act. The combined bill would cut the federal deficit by about $500 billion over 10 years. This amendment, my bipartisan amendment here with Senators Coburn and Sherrod Brown, would build off a proposal put forward in President George W. Bush's fiscal year 2009 budget proposal to rescind $626 million in highway earmarks that were over a decade old and still had less than 10% of the funding utilized. When Transportation Weekly did an analysis of these earmarks at the time, they found that over 60% of the funding, $389 million, was in 152 earmarks that had no funding spent or obligated from them. These clearly are either unwanted or low priority for the designated recipients. And this is nothing against transportation funding either, of course. I fully realize the need for reinvestment in our crumbling infrastructure and its potential for job creation in hard-hit segments like construction. But, Madam President, having hundreds of millions of dollars sit in an account untouched at the Department of Transportation does nothing to address our infrastructure needs or put people back to work. I've tried to build on President Bush's concept a little, and my amendment expands this rescission to all transportation earmarks that are over 10 years old with unobligated balances of more than 90%. At a hearing before the Budget Committee just 2 weeks ago, I asked Transportation Secretary Ray LaHood about these unwanted and unspent earmarks and whether he supported my proposal to rescind them. Secretary LaHood responded, quote, "The answer is yes, we are supportive of your proposal, and we have identified significant millions of dollars worth of earmarks," unquote. So at the suggestion of the chair of the Environment and Public Works Committee, we have also included a provision to allow the Secretary of Transportation to delay a rescission if the project is expected to be obligated within the next 12 months. I know that there are sometimes extenuating circumstances and delays that pop up, and this seemed like a good way to deal with these situations, while still ensuring that the intention to eliminate unwanted and low-priority projects was retained. I also hope that this will help alleviate concerns and ensure that the potential for extenuating circumstances is not used as a reason to somehow oppose our amendment. It's unclear exactly how many hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars would be saved by this proposal being expanded to other transportation earmarks in addition to the previous estimate of $626 million that would be rescinded from unwanted highway earmarks in the first year. This proposal would also be permanent, so there would likely be additional savings as the unwanted earmarks in the most recent highway bill reach their 10-year anniversary. I think this, Madam President, is a very modest proposal going after just the lowest of the low-hanging fruit. It would support going even further and make it cover all federal agencies. But with the uncertainty about how many of these unwanted and unspent earmarks there might be across the whole federal government, our amendment instead requires an annual report by the OMB to collect information from each agency and include recommendations on whether these other unobligated earmarks should be rescinded. So as you can see, this is a proposal with bipartisan support, both in the Senate and from the past administration and this current administration. This really shouldn't be a hard decision, and I hope we have strong support here in the Senate. This is simply about instituting a good government principle of returning unused funds to the Treasury, and it really shouldn't be controversial. If we can't agree to take old earmarks that no one wants and use the money to pay down the deficit, then how are we ever going to get our fiscal house in order?